Story
You
time!
going to bed?
Woo! Story time! Woo!
Snow White!
Can we...
Sorry, Disney.
I hope that comes at the end of every page.
Dude, there's 67 pages!
I hope you at the end of every one of them.
Alright. Once upon a time, there was
Don't
a
really.
nice queen. Like, she was really nice. Did all kinds of nice type queen stuff. Cared about people. Was an overall stand-up queen. Anyway, this queen got all pregnant, had a baby, and named her Snow White. Then, since this story needs antagonists, the perfectly nice queen bites the bullet. She died. Right off the bat.
Cut that out.
That's not needed. Horrific horse-drawn carriage pileup on the old-timey highway. So the king is a single father with a daughter and not a clue how to raise her. So he does the only thing he knows how to and marries a vain, self-obsessed gold digger. She moved into the castle and put up a mirror in her room.
Who was doing
It
that?
was
Sorry.
It was
I
not
made
just
that
any
sound
mirror,
effects.
though. This mirror was a magic mirror. It never lied to the new queen, and she used it so that she could be sure that she was the most beautiful woman in the land. That she would stand in front of the mirror and say, "Oh, mirror of mine, who in this land is the most damn fine?" And the mirror would reply, "Come on, Miss Damn Fine, that's you." So the years go
It is
by,
dark.
Snow White gets older, and more and more
It's
purdy.
dark.
Now, in the original version, she's only 7 when all of this goes down, but like, that's messed up, even for my stories. So we're gonna up it a bit and say that Snow White is 18 at this point in our version. On Snow White's 18th birthday, the queen stole away to her mirror and prompted with it once again, "Oh, mirror mine, who in this land is the most damn fine?"
No fuck.
Did I not say it twice?
No.
Whatever. For the first time, the mirror had a different reply. "Miss Thing, you're fine, it's true, but that Snow White is way finer than you." The queen knew that the mirror couldn't lie. She knew that the day had come when her young stepdaughter had surpassed her, and it was not an easy thing to deal with.
They're
The
related.
queen did exactly what every reasonable person does when faced with this situation.
Oh,
Ordered
dear.
someone to take her into the forest and kill her. Alright.
What?
So in comes a huntsman, and he was tasked with taking Snow White into the woods, killing her and cutting out her lungs and liver, holy shit, to present to the queen as proof of Snow White's death. Important note, this is literally how it goes in the original version.
true.
I'm not that messed up, guys. So the huntsman leads Snow White into the woods and comes to a clearing and takes out his knife. As he's about to put an end to Snow White's terrible reign of beauty, he noticed something. He was crying. He hesitated and said, "I'm sorry, I don't have a choice in this." And she replied,
Can I interrupt
"No."
and ask for no more sound effects?
Oh, okay.
Sorry, nothing personal.
"I'm sorry, I don't have a choice in this." And she replied, "No, I understand. I'm just upset that George R.R. Martin writes so slow I'll never find out what happens in Game of Thrones." The huntsman hadn't thought of that. He thought of all the possibilities about which houses would be left standing, and he knew he couldn't kill Snow White.
What?
He had to spare her. He couldn't rob her of finding out the conclusion of the cultural whirlwind that is Game of Thrones.
How did you
So he
not
said,
spell Rob like it is?
"Go on, get out of here then, and don't waste this chance. You have to stay with the series." Snow White ran off into the woods. The huntsman killed a boar and took its lungs and liver back to the queen, and still thinking they belonged to Snow White.
Wait, wasn't
The
it
queen
the
gave
deer?
them to the cook and told him to prepare them for her to eat.
Ugh.
Jeez. No, this is also straight from the original story. He ate them and felt totally satisfied. What a psycho. For a short time was convinced that once again she was the finest in the land. Snow White wandered through the woods for a time. She passed a little girl in a strange red hood, and in the distance she saw a slightly chunky wolf following the girl pretty clumsily. Then she passed 2 children sleeping and clean with pebbles strewn about everywhere. Next she passed 3 little piglets in the midst of what appeared to be some sort of shady deal with a group of stoneworkers. The woods were a confusing place at this time. Finally, she came across a home. It was a tidy-looking little townhouse set in the side of a hill. She entered through the front door and noticed that whoever lived here had impeccable taste when it came to interior design. Everything went well together. Light was streaming at just right spots, and the colors they took Snow White's breath away. Walked over the table, and 7 places were set, and food was already prepared. It was a round table, and around the table went color-coded things: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. She took a small bite of the vegetables from each setting and drank all the wine in the house. Freaking wasted. I mean, she had just been through quite an ordeal, wanted to forget about as much of it as she could. So Snow White got very drunk and stumbled upstairs and passed out on the floor near the furthest bed. It was 6 o'clock, and that was when the owners came home for the day. They were a group of 7 dwarves. They were all interior designers and met each other at Burning Dwarf, the music festival of the time. They were doing the same thing they always did on their way home from work, recreating scenes from their favorite musicals as they walked. Today's selection was from West Side Story, and they had chosen I Feel Pretty. And let me tell you, they have mastered that song. Their performance on this day was a thing of beauty. Anyway, they get inside their house and go and sit in their seats at the table. The dwarves had changed their names to the colors of the rainbow, hence the color-coded table settings. Actually, just about everything in the house was color-coded that could be. Slowly, they noticed that something wasn't right. Red said, "Someone has been in my chair." Orange said,
That got cut off because of the formatting. Sorry, I don't remember what he said.
Alright, Orange said something there. Yellow said, "My plate seems different." Green said, "I think some of my veggies are gone." Blue said, "Oh, this is horrible. They put my fork on the wrong side of the table. This is wrong, wrong, wrong." Indigo said, "My glass is empty. I know I poured a glass of wine for everyone earlier. We had to let it breathe." And Violet said, "OMG, you guys! All the wine in the house is gone." Those were the magic words. It set the dwarves off. They liked their ritual of unwinding and talking. "Someone took my heterosexuality." Is what Orange said. "Someone took my heterosexuality." Thank you.
I was trying to be subtle.
They like their ritual of unwinding and talking with a little wine. They got together and decided it was best to just get this horrible day over with because all the wine's gone. That's when they saw Snow White pass out on the floor, and boy were they confused. They elected to just leave her there and deal with her in the morning, so they all climbed into their rainbow-colored beds and went to sleep. Next day, they woke up and Snow White still had not moved. They went downstairs, had some breakfast, and sent Indigo and Violet out to the market to replenish their wine stores. Around midday, Snow White began to stir. Nice. All she could say was that she had a splitting headache and yelled at, "Oh, you poor thing! Let me get you something for that right away!" He was the only dwarf that took sympathy on Snow White at this point. Indigo and Violet returned an hour before supper time, and Snow White was feeling well enough to tell them what happened. The dwarves sat around listening intently and got together when Snow White was finished talking to decide what they would do. Finally, Red said, "Honestly, we can absolutely relate to what we've been through. Every one of us can say that we've been targeted for being way, way too fabulous. You can stay with us as long as you need to. Just please do us a favor and try to keep things neat for us. We can't just or something. We really don't want a mess." Snow White adjusted to her new life with 7 dwarves, who became the best girlfriend she could have asked for. Back at the castle, the queen once again stood in front of her mirror. "Oh, mirror, mirror of mine, who in this land is the most damn fine? This thing you find is true, but through them woods with some fab dwarves, that Snow White is way finer than you."
Story is literally my life.
I love that line. The queen could not believe her ears. Thought she had eaten Snow White's lungs and liver. The huntsman had lied to her, and Snow White still drew breath. The queen threw together a quick disguise and dressed as a peddler. She went to the home where Snow White was living. She brought with her the finest bodice she had ever seen. Offered to sell it to Snow White, and she could not refuse. She had never seen something so beautiful. When the peddler woman offered to lace up the bodice for her, Snow White was uncomfortable, but allowed the woman to do it. The queen tied so tight that Snow White could not breathe, and then she said, "Now who's the finest?" and did her best touchdown dance before spiking the peddler costume onto Snow White's head. "Yeah! What's up?" So she then returned to the castle content with what she had done. The dwarves returned home and could not find Snow White at first. It was like, "Hey, hey," or "Hey, girl, hey," like he did every day when he got home. "Hey, girl, hey," before the first time. Didn't get the customary "hey, hey" back. All the dwarves were taken by an uneasy feeling. They found Snow White just outside, laying in the garden. They saw the bodice were tied too tight, and they undid the laces. Wait, who? Oh, Red. Red looked at her in the bodice and said, "Well, that bodice is absolutely to die for. But if you take that literally, you won't turn many heads." Snow White explained the peddler woman and how she turned out to be the queen, and the dwarves told her not to talk to anyone else who may come to the house. Back at the castle, the queen wanted to be sure that Snow White was dead. She went to the mirror and said, "Oh, mirror, mirror mine, who in this land is the most damn fine? This thing you find is true, but through them woods with them fab dwarves, that Snow White is way finer than you." I put that on her shirt. The queen couldn't believe she had survived again. She then went and got a poisoned headband and another disguise and set out the next day for Snow White's home. Once again, Snow White talked to the stranger, and upon hearing she had a headband, they all couldn't resist. Snow White loved her some headbands. She took the headband and put it on her head. The second it touched her, she fell down dead. The queen ran off into the woods, eager to return to her mirror yet again. However, before she could get there, the dwarves returned home and found Snow White on the floor. Orange said, "Oh, no, this headband is all wrong. You cannot wear this in our home," and took the headband off Snow White. She came back to life and got up and once again explained the mysterious strangers. The dwarves forbade her from engaging passing strangers again and told her that they meant it. No strangers for her. The queen returned back at the castle and rushed to her room. "Oh, mirror, mirror of mine, who in this land is the most damn fine? This thing you find is true, but through them woods with them fab dwarves, that Snow is way finer than you." Never get tired of reading that. At this, the queen retreated to a secret room. The queen had some experience with witchcraft and used her knowledge of the arcane witch arts to poison apple. It looked beautiful, like the most delicious apple you've ever seen. Like, if you saw this apple, and I told you it was poison, and if you ate it, you'd die, you'd still eat it! It looked that appetizing. Anyway, she went to look for another disguise. Fortunately, she was just about out of disguises, too. All she had left was the butt half of one of those two-person horse costumes. So dressed as a horse's ass, the queen went down and knocked on Snow White's door. She told Snow White she had lost her other half and that she was so upset that the costume doesn't make any sense anymore. I would be so confused if that happened to me. Snow White assured her that if she saw a horse's head walking around the woods, she would be really confused. She would let them know that their back end was looking for them. The queen thanked Snow White and offered half of their apple to her as a sign of gratitude. Snow White loved apples and couldn't resist. She dove right into the apple, and after the first bite, she was dead. The queen let out a "Change places!" Part 2. Terrifying cackle, and walked through the woods singing about how she'd finally killed Snow White. The dwarves, between verses of "Sing into the rain," heard the queen and ran home. They tried everything to revive Snow White, but nothing worked. They laid her out in her bed's clothes, and after a few days went by, they noticed she hadn't lost any of her color or any of her beauty. They were confused, and even though Violet says something like, "Jeez, even in death, she doesn't show signs of aging." I just meant signs of aging anything. Must be nice. The dwarves were all overjoyed at this, but because of staring at dead people is a cool thing to do in fairy tales, apparently, they bought a glass coffin and put her inside it. Very disturbing. They made a boss floor arrangement and laid the coffin on top of it and would visit her every day to admire how perfect they'd be able to make a funeral parlor look. Back at the castle, the queen went to the mirror again. "Oh, mirror, mirror mine, who in this land is the most damn fine? Come on, Miss Thing, damn fine, that's you." The queen heard what she wanted to hear. Snow White was dead. And there was no one to challenge her fineness now. Days later, there was a knock on the dwarf's door. Red answered it and was face to face with a man doing some kind of pee-pee dance on his doorstep. "Oh, hey there, sir. May I please come in and use the bathroom? It's beyond an emergency," said the man at the door. Red led him in and showed him to the bathroom. Afterward, the man explained that he was a prince on his way through the woods looking at the king that would one day be his. The dwarves told him of the princess they once knew and offered to show her to him. Why would they show a dead princess? Anyway, when his eyes met Snow White in the glass coffin, the prince's jaw nearly hit the floor. He then threw a temper tantrum. "How can when I finally meet a princess, she's all dead? Stupid princeliness, stupid life." To calm him down and make sure that he got out of their house without breaking any of their one-of-a-kind furnishings during his tantrum, the dwarves told him that he could take the coffin with him. What? He graciously accepted because, you know, traveling around with a dead person is totally normal. Anyway, he sticks his servants with the coffin, and in true inept servant fashion, they drop the coffin. It gets a huge crack up the side, and the prince was mad. He figured he could at least pawn the coffin and make a little money to pay for his gambling habit. He liked betting in the local wildlife races. He heard there's going to be a race between a tortoise and a hare soon. Easy money. While he was examining the crack to see if it was a deal breaker for the pawn shop, he noticed that Snow White's eyes were open. He was looking around and trying to get the lid off the coffin. That would freak me the hell out. He flung the lid off and said, "Zombie, stay where you are!" But Snow White told him that she was no zombie, only a bit lost. And he believed her and asked her to marry him on the spot. She said yes for some reason. I mean, I probably would have. They literally said about 10 words to each other. Oh, I probably wouldn't have. They literally said about 10 words to each other, and now they're engaged. But I digress. The Prince Snow White returned to the castle where they are to be wed. The queen heard of the wedding, but did not know who the bride was to be. Feeling insecure, she went back to a mirror. "Oh, mirror, mirror mine, who in this land the most fun? Miss Thank You." Sorry, I just saw Lato bouncing around in the background, distracting me.
It's
Miss
me.
Thank You, fine, it's true. But oh my god, have you seen the young
You're right, it is Lato.
queen? Like, seriously, I can't even rhyme. She's amazing. The queen had to know who this young queen was, had to see with her own eyes the beauty of this woman. She walked to the wedding feast, and what she saw stopped her dead in her tracks. There sat Snow White, sitting next to the prince. Now I say stop dead in her tracks. I mean dead in her tracks. Like the queen saw Snow White and died. Right there. Poof. I like to say that everyone lived happily ever after here. And for once I will. Everyone involved in this story, minus the boar and the 2 dead queens, lived happily ever after. Don't get used to it. The next one's is gonna have a horrific ending. And that was Snow White by BM261945.